The Wii is a console that brings back so many great memories for me. Not only was it one of the first consoles I've ever owned, but it was my introduction to Nintendo. Yeah, I've played games on other consoles plenty of times in years past, but none of them have clicked with me quite like the Wii did. Not to mention, it's a contributing factor to why I love Nintendo so much now. Their consoles tend to be weird and junk, and not to say that they're perfect by any means, but it matches with me a lot better than, say, the PlayStation or Xbox. The Wii's games were nothing short of special and incredibly fun for me either, and I can remember multiple occasions where I brought my Wii over to my grandmother's house, no matter how inconvenient it was to pack up all those dang cables just to play Mario Galaxy 2. But there's something that I'm forgetting. When the Wii came out, there was one specific game that made people flock to the shelves. With over 80 million copies sold, Wii Sports was the biggest Wii game by far, and even Mario Kart Wii could barely scratch nearly half of its sales, but Wii Sports did have the advantage of coming bundled with most Wii systems, so couple that with the fact that the Wii was Nintendo's newest console at the time, this contributed to its sales immensely. Eventually, Nintendo realized that they needed to capitalize on Wii Sports' massive success, and what better way to do it than by releasing a bunch of games with Wii in the title. Wii Play Motion, Wii Fit U, Wii Music, Wii Party, Wii Sports Resort, Wii Party U. Jeez, try saying that 5 times fast. These games were the successors to Wii Sports, having different takes on the Wii's motion-controlled gimmick. But were they any good, and do they still hold up today? That's what I'm here to find out. So, Wii Sports. This is an interesting game in that it wasn't actually meant to be a game in the first place. Its real purpose was to demonstrate the Wii's technology, show off what was possible with it, and introduce the unique control scheme to new players. With that in mind, let's get into the game itself. Going past the title screen greets us with a menu of the different modes and games. Starting from the top, there's tennis, baseball, bowling, golf, boxing, and 2 extra modes consisting of smaller minigames. So let's start with tennis. This version of tennis is of course meant to be more reminiscent of real tennis, so there aren't any fancy Mario Tennis tricks here, and it's about as dull to watch as real tennis due to the lack of music outside of replays. Thrilling gameplay. Your only method of control is by shaking the Wii remote to move your tennis racket left and right, although the direction in which your racket seems to hit in seems to be really wonky. It's less apparent here though, so we'll touch on that later. Other than that, it can be pretty hard to hit the ball at times. For whatever reason, even whenever it looks like you should have hit it, it just flies right by you. That's not to say it'll happen every time, but you really do have to pay very close attention to make sure you're landing a direct hit before swinging. Either the ball is sentient and wants me to lose, I just suck at the game, or perhaps the game is broken. Tennis used to be my second least favorite by far just because of how random the consistency on landing hits was. Even now, knowing that, it's still pretty finicky. Hey there, Future Deluxe in here. Something I overlooked while writing the script was that Wii Sports is the first Wii game. Now because of this, I know some may think my complaints about the motion controls aren't valid, but my intent is to take a look at Wii Sports and see whether or not it's still as fun as I found it to be years ago. And personally, I feel as though trying to excuse any of the flaws in the motion controls just because it's the first Wii game is lazy. I want to give genuine criticisms here, so hopefully that clears up any confusion. This brings me to another thing. I've heard some people say that Wii Tennis is a glorified waggle fest. Put simply, they're saying all you have to do to win is shake your Wii remote at 5 miles a minute. To say the least, I tried it myself and it actually worked way worse than I was expecting. My assumption is that those people made the comment as a joke, but if that's the case, then the joke doesn't make any sense at all. I suppose it depends upon how fast you're shaking the Wiimote, but even then it's still better to wait then shake the Wiimote. After all these years, Wii Tennis has somehow surprised me a lot more than I thought going into this. Maybe that's just due to me being a little more attentive now than I was years ago, but either way, Wii Tennis has proven to be a decently fun time waster, although I'm not sure if I would say it's anything more than that. Up next we have baseball, and it's alright. In baseball, there are two teams going against each other. One team starts by throwing the baseballs, and the other starts on the receiving end. As far as I'm aware, player 1 will always start on the receiving end, although I'm not entirely sure as it may be randomized. The goal of the game is to get as many points as you can before all of the innings are finished. Pretty simple. I'll say this much about it, it's the game where the motion controls work nearly the best by far, and thankfully you can actually move around the bat. In Wii Tennis, they could have easily not included the motion controls to begin with simply because how hard, fast, and which direction you hit the ball in is automatic. In Wii Baseball, you can better control the angle and power of the hit, helping it to feel more enjoyable and somewhat immersive. Not to mention, it's incredibly satisfying whenever you hit a home run. That's to say, if you can hit a home run. I swear man, the AI is pretty dang good at catching the ball quickly on the few times you make one minor screw up with your angle or timing. Except of course whenever the doofuses drop it. Nerds! On the other side of the spectrum, there's pitching. Whenever the game reaches a point in which you've received 3 outs or you're at a certain point in the game, you switch to the pitcher's side. There's not much to say about the pitcher. You can control the speed at which the ball goes and throw screwballs, curveballs, and splitters. This can definitely be the most stressful part of the game, especially whenever it comes down to the last few points. Like in this game where I tried my absolute hardest to keep the opposing team from getting any more points due to a tie we got into. I tried and tried to get one more point, but despite my efforts it ended up being a tie anyway. All in all, Wii Baseball is pretty dang fun. Not my favorite, but pretty close. Following up, there's bowling, and I probably have the least to say about this one. You can aim your shot and its curve, and that's about it control-wise. The aim of the game is to knock down as many pins as possible before the game ends. Bowling is the sport I remember playing the most out of all of them though, in multiplayer at least. It's decent enough by yourself, but throw in a few pals and you've got yourself a real good game. Funnily enough, I can recall a few times Wii bowling competitions were held in my area, and if that isn't proof enough of how fun it can be, then I'm not sure what is. Golf is next, and let me say, I actually really like this sport now. Years ago I despised it, but suddenly while recording, something about it clicked with me. In golf, your objective is to get the golf ball in this flag hole in as few shots as possible. The lower your putts, the better your score. So no, 4+ is not a good score in case you're wondering. I just happen to suck terribly at some of the maps. Speaking of which, each one of these maps aren't half bad. They all offer up a good, semi-relaxing challenge from the other sports. I say semi-relaxing because the Wii motion control curse has struck again. What I'm referring to is swinging to hit the ball. It feels as if you've just turned down your mouse sensitivity just enough to where it's noticeable and bothersome as all get out at just the wrong times. It's not nearly as irksome whenever you're still a good distance away from the goal, however when you are, it can be difficult to get that precise light tap in. And now, a compilation of me trying to putt my golf ball to a location farther away than what should be humanly possible. Okay, fine, I'll change my angle. Sheesh. Last on the list of sports, we have my all-time favorite, boxing. To this day, I can remember several Saturdays I spent in it. It's way more fun than it has any right to be, being what is essentially a mini-game. Basically, each match has you go up against other Miis to see who can diminish each other's energy bar first, and subsequently get that Mii to stay on the ground after being knocked out for at least 10 seconds. To even lower the opposing Mii's energy bar, you'll either have to hit them on the body or on their head. If this were real, I'm certain there would be blood everywhere. I mean, honestly, look at how painful some of these jabs look. Oh my gosh, that's horrible. Just look at her flip. I would be lying if I said this didn't cause me a great deal of laughter over the years. Now that I think about it, that might be why I turned out the way I did. The motion controls aren't half bad here, although they do raise a bit of an issue. It's not the controls themselves, like I said, they're fine, but it's how they're explained in-game that bothers me. I've played boxing for longer than I'd be willing to admit, and never do I remember the controls being explained anywhere. Fortunately, I decided to look further into it before finishing the video though, because they are explained, but only the first time you play it. Never again is there a refresher or controls guide, nope, nothing. This game was made for casual gamers, so a better reminder would be nice, especially considering it can be very difficult to beat any of the Miis if you're only aware of the basic jab. Heck, that's why I ended up sucking a lot in the footage. Speaking of which, here's a rundown of them. Holding both the Wiimote and nunchuck vertically while doing a punching motion will allow you to aim around the center of the opposing Mii's body. Doing the same, but with both controllers turned horizontally, aims your punches higher, and punching in an upward motion with the Wiimote angled vertically performs a side jab. Or so I assume? Apparently doing this is supposed to perform the uppercut move, but it just does a side jab instead. I don't really understand it either. Maybe I'm just doing something wrong, but I can barely ever get the uppercut to even work. Again, all I'm asking for is a simple reminder. It feels as though golf reminds me of how to swing a club every time I play the game, so I'm not sure why boxing couldn't just do the same. Calm. Let me swing, you stupid! Other than that, I'd be willing to pay for a more fleshed out and fully functional version of this, although I know it'll never happen. A man can dream, gosh darn it! Anyway, that's all of the sports, so let's move on to the training minigames. Each sport has 3 minigames, totaling up to 15 minigames in all. I'll go over them quickly as there isn't much to talk about, but here are some of my personal favorites. Hitting home runs. Pretty self-explanatory. You try to hit as many home runs as you can before the game is over. The minigame is especially fun if you can get the timing just right for each swing. Power throws. Knock down as many pins as you can, and after each set, another row of pins will be added. This one is more so just basic bowling, but with a crap ton of pins. The only reason why it's one of my favorites is because of how dang satisfying it is whenever you knock down a ton of the pins. So satisfying. Spin control. Avoid the barriers in each lane and try to knock down the pin. It definitely adds a lot of challenge to the regular bowling and ends up being a lot more fun than bowling because of that. That's not to say bowling is bad, just not much fun considering there's no real challenge to it. Hitting the green. Land the ball as close to the flag as possible. Although it may not sound like much, I enjoyed it a lot more than I was expecting to given the simplistic idea it presents. Finally, the last 3 are all of the boxing minigames. First of the bunch is working the bag. Throw punches at each bag until they break off of their chain, rinse and repeat to see how many you can break before the time runs out. Not only is it satisfying, but good practice for the real deal later. Dodging. Dodge the balls that Matt throws at you and try to avoid getting hit. Yet another simplistic idea that turned out to be surprisingly fun. Lastly, throwing punches. Punch Matt's mitts to get as many points as possible, but be sure to watch which mitt he throws up next and avoid punching Matt if you don't want a penalty. And that's just about everything in Wii Sports. All in all, I think it's still a decently enjoyable game even after nearly 13 years. The sports are much better than I remember them being all of those years ago, although the motion controls certainly haven't grown on me. I mean, golf used to be my least favorite sport in the game, and now I'm pretty confident with saying it's tennis for sure. While I may not come back to Wii Sports as often as I used to, this was certainly a nice opportunity to finally play it again. It may not be great, but it's a part of my childhood, and if anything, that's what matters most to me. Oh, and you're probably wondering what the heck that fitness mode is. Don't get your hopes up, it's just a fitness test that recycles all of the training minigames. Alright, time to get back to boxing. Wait, what? You can't pause? Oh, come on, game, give me a break. Whoever designed this must have forgotten there was a start button on the Wii remote. Sheesh. Anyway, I love Wii Sports, besides this of course, but maybe it's finally time that I try out its sequel, Wii Sports Resort. As if that'll ever happen.